people. All right, so everyone, good morning and thank you for coming. A real pleasure to have you here, and it's a pleasure for me to introduce our guest speaker today, Angela Livino. Dr. Livino is currently the advisor to the CEO of Empresa de Energia Elétrica, EPE, in Brazil, and responsible for a lot of the, not just hydropower, but energy planning across Brazil. She did a postdoctoral fellowship at Harvard in the School of Sustainability, the Program for Sustainability, where she met our great colleague Mauricio Arias, who's now at the University of Central Florida. And she's here in town for some exciting tourism and stuff during Carnival, so she was able to make it up here for a day to give us a nice seminar, a nice talk about the sustainability of hydropower in the future in Brazil. And so Angela's background is really in hydraulics, hydrology, engineering, and then moving forward in her PhD about the policy of energy development and new water resources planning laws. And so I think we're going to see a broad perspective today. I know the audience shares a broad set of disciplines and perspectives on hydropower sustainability. So we'll have a seminar and then some time for discussion. I know we have some folks online. Thank you very much for joining us. If you are not able to stay for the whole thing, this actually is being recorded and will be available on the Amazon Dams YouTube channel, which will post a link to the Amazon Dams, the listserv, as well as our Facebook page. And TCD and everything else. And this is one of the first, maybe one of the first formal activities of our new NSF-funded Research Coordination Network. And we're really trying to incorporate input and perspective from people outside of academia. So Dr. Livino has a strong background in academia and is now working in what we sort of call the real world. And so we're really pleased to have her here. If you're not on our listserv, you can feel free to sign up on amazondamsnetwork.org and make sure you sign in before you leave so we can keep track of everyone. And with that, I think I'll introduce Angela Livino. Thank you very much for coming.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Dave. Firstly, I want to thanks a lot for the invitation to be here. It's a great pleasure. And thanks, Mauricio, for introducing me to David. And secondly, I want to apologize in advance for my poor English. Sometimes it's not I'm not used to work and talk in English, but so this is. But it's a great opportunity to be here, and I hope I can meet your expectations and all the people that are getting. Good morning for everyone here too, and let's start to talk. I firstly, oh, sorry. How do I move? And how long are you expecting?
So, maybe have 45 minutes and then some time for questions, or
okay.
A little longer, a little shorter.
35 slides. Yeah, okay. And you can interrupt if you want, and you can make that informal and talk with you. Okay. Now it's just about as you can see, it's a presentation based upon our formal presentations at EPE. So I put this disclaimer just to say, to emphasize that it's any recommendation or consulting is not from EPE, it's my perspective, but I've been working there for, I think that it's interesting to talk a little bit about my background. I've been working there for 12 years now. I started in 2005, and before that I worked in ISO. The ONS is the ISO that takes care of the operation of the system in Brazil. I will talk a little bit about our system, and I've been an engineer there in ONS for 5 years, and before that I made my master's in water resource in Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, and working CEPEL. It's an electric research center in Rio de Janeiro too. So it's been like 18 years in the energy sector, and I always working and studying. I made my PhD during the work, so it was a really mixed experience, like for real life and also from the academic perspective. So that's about the outline of the presentation. I'll talk a little bit about EPE. Who is EPE? Who is this strange company and new, like a new company in Brazil? And about the Brazilian power system and their role for hydropower. The planning, so I'll talk about the planning future Brazilian energy matrix and their role for hydropower in the Amazon, especially because it's our frontier. It's our the biggest challenge that we have, and gaps in needs to right hydropower development, and we would like to build the right hydros and to build them right. So it's something that I want to discuss with you. It's a informal discussion. I bring here a lot of our main challenges related with different perspectives, especially from the indigenous and environmental concerns. I will talk a little bit about that. So that's the broad perspective about the institutional structure of Brazilian energy sector. Yes, there's a lot of institutions. In the high-level policy guidelines, we have CNPE, the National Energy Policy Council, and it's responsible for the policy guidelines. And then we have the Ministry of Mines and Energy, that's responsible for policy design and energy planning. And that's where EPE is vinculated to the Ministry of Energy. I talk more, it's 100% public company linked to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and is responsible for planning. Not just about electricity, we taking care about all energy side. We have oil and gas, and we have the director responsible for oil and gas. We have electricity transmission and all of that. And we have also a supply monitoring institution that we call Power Sector Monitoring Committee that's linked to the Ministry of Mines and Energy, and they have like all the institutions of the sector have a seat in this committee, and they get together once a month to have all the monitoring, to observe how the conditions of the system and all the risks that we have. So, and then we have all the agencies related to the energy sector. We have the main is the National Electricity Agency, ANEL, and we have also the National Petroleum Agency, the ANP, and also we have the Water Agency, the National Water Agency, that's related with our work, especially because we are mainly hydropower based. I will talk more about that. So we have a lot of interactions with the National Water Agency. And finally, we have the system operator, as I said, as I used to work there, national system operator that's taking care of all the operation from the side of transmission, the decision of transmissions, and also the decision in generation. It's a centralized dispatch that we have in Brazil. It's different from US that we have like 8 or 9 different ISOs. In Brazil, we have just one that operates all the system. And we have finally the commercialization. We have an entity at Electricity Energy Commercialization Chamber that's responsible for all the sales and all the stuff related with money, let's say like that. And so more about EPE. EPE is 100% state-owned company, as I said, established in 2004 and based in Rio de Janeiro. EPE is a government agency that runs energy planning and support Ministry of Energy and policy decisions. That's an interesting thing about the history. We are created in 2004. As I said, I started there in 2005, since the beginning of the company. And at the beginning, we used to say, oh, we are a new company, so take care, we starting. But actually, the work that we supposed to do is not a new work. We are responsible for planning. But during the late 90s in Brazil, we start a privatization movement. So we decided to stop, the government at that time think that we didn't need a central planning agency. We can live with the market, and the market will take care of the expansion. But it didn't work. Actually, we ended up in a rationing in 2001. And as a result of the rationing, all the reflection about what are the reasons about the rationing, and we decide to reconstruct the structure of central planning. So we recreated a company to take care of the planning, but it's different from the earlier structure when we have a state company. We call Eletrobras. It's like a huge holding company that take care of all the stuff, the commercialization, the generation, and the planning. You decide to not come back to that kind of structure and to create a company, as EPE was created, just to work with the Ministry of Energy. It's not, we do not work for private sector, we do not sell work for, we just work for the Ministry of Energy. So we are responsible for planning studies for the energy industry, and then start the things related with hydropower. We are, in our responsibilities, we have to do the hydro inventories and also the feasibility studies of hydropower. But it's not just EPE that can do that. It's really, it's a hybrid model. We can still have private investors running the hydropower inventors, but also EPE can do that. And EPE, why? We can think why EPE needs to do that if the private sector can do. But sometimes private sector are not interested to do, like in the hard, let's say, when you talk about the Amazon regions and rivers in Amazon, we are talking about huge amounts of money and amounts of time, and sometimes private sector are not interested in doing, it's not right to say the right job, but it's like they are not interested to do the whole job. They like to work as the basin as a whole. They are interested, like, just see, this is the best hydropower project, so I'm just interested in that. But they are not looking at the whole river basin. So that's why the reason why EPE was thinking about taking care about these studies. And also, EPE studies support design governmental policies. EPE has a key role in generation transmission auctions in energy market design. And we are now we have a technical staff about 350 people with average age of 38 years old. And it's interesting to point out that because now our president has 40 years old, so he's really new and he is really connected with people from company. And most of 65% of our people has master's or PhD degrees. So you can read about that. I will not read all the main activities, but it's interesting to point out a lot of different activities that EPE has. For example, National Energy Balance. It's a long, it's it's a one-year publication to talk about the results, especially the results for the last year. So it's a good summarize, a good reference to consult about the situation and also we have the long-term energy national plan and a lot of hydro generation inventory studies, and including integrated environmental evaluation of river basin. As I said, it's one of the main challenges, especially at the beginning of EPE in 2006 and 2007. We start to running 80 studies of hydro generation inventory in some rivers in Amazon. For example, we run the Juruena river basin inventory, we run the Aripuanã, and also the left side of Amazon, we run the Blanco River, and a lot of rivers that we start to do the inventory, and exactly to try to bring a broad view and to take care of the whole river basin. So it was an interesting experience that we had at the beginning of EPE. And also we take care of energy auctions, all the stuff related with registration, technical habilitation, and firm energy calculation of whole projects, even wind farms or thermal plants or hydropower, all of source of energy. We have to evaluate all the projects. And also to calculate the reference auction price. It's something that took a lot of work with it, because for example, we have in one auction, we have already had 1,000 and 200, 100,000 projects in just one auction. So it's a lot of work to take care of that. But it's an important, it's also a good source of information, because we learn a lot with this work in the auctions. And also feasibility studies for transmission systems. So it's a lot of broad work. So let's talk a little bit about the Brazilian power system and the role of hydropower. I bring some information about our electricity sector and comparing Brazil with world. We have some information from IEA and also from EPE. When you compare the power generation matrix in Brazil in 2015, we have mainly based on hydropower. We have 65% of our generation from hydropower in 2015. And when you compare Brazil with the rest of the world in 2013, for example, with the world you have 21% from renewables, and Brazil has more than 74% from renewables when you consider all biomass and wind and also hydro. So it's interesting perspective. When you talk about total primary energy, not electricity, but energy supply, we also have a good position because we mainly based in oil, on oil, but we also have a lot of for sugarcane products because we have a extensive program in sugarcane from our cars, and we also have hydro and natural gas, but we don't have a lot of coal. That's the main difference when you compare the total primary energy supply in Brazil with the rest of the world. So when you talk about electricity, as I said, we have mainly based in hydro. When you compare the rest of the world, Brazil has more than 65%, and the main base on electricity. Oh,
does that include small hydro? Sorry, just
yes. All hydro.
The 65%.
Yes, all hydro. Yes. And when you compare the rest of the world, mainly electricity is based on coal, so it's good for our matrix. We make our renewable share. It's a good share in Brazil. And it's a funny picture that we used to use, especially when we talk about European countries. When you it's not the case for US, because US is a continental country as Brazil. We are talking about 4,000 kilometers. When we are talking about Europe, we can compare the distance. Like in Brazil, we have one system that long distance transmission lines, and some numbers here from 2016 installed capacity in Brazil, 142 gigawatts, with that share of hydro, as I said, 65%. And importation, we have a binational hydropower with Paraguay, so we have an importation from hydropower from Paraguay at 6 gigawatts. Electricity consumption is about 560 terawatts a year. And peak demand, we had that in 2014. I will talk more later, but we are under a huge recession, economic crisis in Brazil. So we still have our peak demand in 2014, and we didn't have more than that. But it's for another perspective, it's a good opportunity to think. I will talk more about that. But we are under a recession, and the number of consumer units about 8. So following the hydro development in Brazil, it's good to point out about as I said, the hydroelectric share is about 65% of installing capacity, and we have some interesting things about owners in the same river basin. As you said in the figure, you can point out this. It's an example from Paraná River Basin. We have different rivers, Rio Grande, Rio Tietê, and we have multiple ownership in the same river. So it brings complexity to operation of these, and that's one reason why we have one central operation. So it's located in several river basins with significant storage capacity. That's something historical. We started our development of hydropower in late 1950s, and we start looking for supply from the storage capacity, especially to avoid dependency of oil. It's something related to that. We thought that it was better to have our supply of energy from hydroelectrical and also with storage capacity. But as we can talk later, it's not easy to continue with that approach, especially when you are talking about Amazon rivers, but it's especially related with geographical reasons, and we talk later about that. Oh, major benefits of hydro in the past is, I think that's there's two things that I want to point out in this slide. We have the map again of Brazil. We have circulated the four main we call subsystems. It's the main the north region here. We have the north region, northeast, southeast, and south. We used to work with these four main regions in Brazil. But this southeast is the main populated area with the high density of concentration of people and economic and industry. But it's interesting to point out that hydro storage has a key role, store water in the wet season for utilization in the dry season, and turn the system dispatch more economical. We can avoid thermal plants running, consider these characteristics of our hydro system. Important source of system operation flexibility is the main reason why Brazil has a low carbon energy matrix and has added a lot of value for the transmission grid, which integrates hydropower in the different regions of the country and creates a valuable portfolio effect. That's really interesting. We have a complementarity between regions in Brazil. Sometimes we have a dry season here in the north, but we are in the rainy season in the south, and we can allow from the transmission line to transfer for energy in the long distance and avoid the rationing or something like that. Major benefits of hydro today, especially when you talk about renewable energy source, have added a lot to this landscape. We are running fast to the wind, especially wind expansion in Brazil. I will talk more about that, but we have now more than 12 gigawatts installed of wind farms in Brazil. It's almost 10% of our capacity. And the next 10 years, we intend to expand to 20% of our installed capacity to the wind, with wind. But it brings a lot of complexity to the operation of the system. And when you consider we talk more about the solar panels too, but we starting in solar, but both sources of energy has a problem with intermittency. It is not firm. We cannot count on it the whole day. So in that point, the hydropower that we had gets importance because they can firm the energy from the renewable energy source. So the renewable, together with hydro, create a renewable portfolio in the country. It's something new because it's when we plan the hydropower expansion, when we plan our source, our share of hydropower, we didn't thought about that, but it's something good that we have today. And there are many complementary effects, different construction times, and when you think about the portfolio to expand, we can have like solar, photovoltaic plants that can be installed in 18 months. But we also have hydropower that takes about 5 and 6 years. So you can plan your expansion with different construction times to attend the demand, different project scales and investor profile. When you talk about hydropower, especially large dams, we are talking about millions of dollars, about 10 millions of dollars. But when you talk about wind farms, we are talking about smaller investors and smaller groups, and you can bring that to the expansion. It's good. And we have regional complementary and hydro reservoir makeup for production variability for wind and solar, and seasonality of biomass. We have, as I said, a huge share of sugar cane, especially to the ethanol in our vehicle fleet. And as a consequence, we have production of electricity from biomass. So, but it's not a huge share in electricity matrix, but we can expand a lot with that source. The energy warehouse of hydro plants were essential for the economic feasibility of renewable energy source. As I said, we can use our storage of the hydropower to compensate the variation of wind and solar. That's an example of production complementary between wind, solar, and biomass. And we have, for example, as a blue line here, we have an example of hydropower, especially in the Amazon, when you have more generation, the summer in Brazil. And that time we have less generation from biomass. We have solar is almost the same during the year because it's just during the day. But when you compare with wind, for example, wind in we have a complementarity, especially because this is a typical wind farm in Northeast. When you have the concentration of the source, the wind farms are in the Northeast, and they can be complementary with the hydropower, especially in the Amazon part of Brazil. So and these complementaries have been recognized internationally, and recently we have in 2016 a lot of documents talking about the complementarity between hydropower and other renewable generation technologies. It's a challenge, and it's something that has been discussed not just in Brazil, but especially in Europe, because all the commitments that Europe Commission has with renewables brings a lot of all that to the discussion. Oh, I anticipated a little bit about the benefits that go beyond power generation, not just to hydropower, but when you talk about, for example, a wind industry or a photovoltaic, we have renewable and zero emission and huge social and environmental programs especially to qualify local jobs. It's something that we, not just about the hydropower industry, but also in wind industry, we have to qualify local jobs, and we have regional development and economic development when you consider these new sources of energy. So let's continue on the challenging thinking about the future Brazilian energy matrix and the role of hydropower in the Amazon. This is a recent publication from 2016 in EPE. It's some numbers here, but it's just to point out that the potential in Brazil is small hydros are included here. The hydro potential yet to be explored in Brazil is about 70 gigawatts, located mainly in Amazon region, with competitive pricing, including the transmission system. But it's a huge challenge. But when you talk about the whole basins, it's the number of river basins in Brazil. We have the share that is under operation and the inventory potential in the third column. So the total, when you consider, for example, in the Amazon region, we have just 80% of the total potential that has been, and that number is 172. It's a revised number. We used to have like a 250 as the number of the inventory potential, the hydropower total potential in Brazil. But it's not a real number. It's like the conditions, like in the normal conditions, or when you thought about in late 70s or 80s, the way that you used to make hydropower, you can think about 250. But now we did that job to try to bring a more realistic number. So we cut that number to 172. It's a more realistic, but even this number, we have a huge challenge, and we have a lot of part of this potential that we know. That's another way to see that numbers is a graphic, the same numbers. When you consider the red one is the part of the potential to be exploited, and the blue one is already exploited. So we can see that Amazon is our frontier, and it's something that we have to consider. But hydro reservoirs are essential to produce synergy, as I said, especially when you consider the penetration of renewable energy source, but also to reduce fuel costs of thermal generation and integrate seasonal biomass and intermittent wind energy, and represent a virtual structure for the storage and transport of gas, natural gas. It's something that we also think that sometimes we are on the huge discussion in Brazil to change our regulation on the natural gas market in Brazil, especially because of the Petrobras transitions. I think that all of you know about the crisis that Petrobras is our big company, oil company in Brazil, is under a huge problem. It's hard to talk about that. It's under a corruption investigation, and they are rethinking all the projects that they used to work, and they are changing the way that you used to work in the natural gas. So we are discussing how will be the future of natural gas in Brazil, because we might expand our production, but it's hard to think about having lots of our energy matrix from natural gas, because we have commitments to NDC, we have commitment to avoid emissions from CO2, and we have to rethink about the system with natural gas. But we talk about a lot about the advantage. We know the advantage of hydropower, but we also recognize the challenges. So I talk more now about the challenges that we are facing now, and especially I will talk more, especially consider the recession and the economic situation in Brazil. We can think about the opportunities that we have to rethink the way that we used to work with hydropower, for example. So we have to consider the three dimensions of economic and society and environmental. So we have, from the economic perspective, to think about the regional and local development, income tax collection, and economic development, attractive funding for the economy. And when we talk about the Amazon region in Brazil, we are talking about region that usually has lack of social care. So they are poor parts of country. So that is something that we have to take care. So, and when we talk about societies, we have significant social and environmental programs, improving quality of life. We have to take care and qualified local jobs, conservation funds, infrastructure for the municipalities, support indigenous and traditional communities, and educational programs, and energy for the local and regional economy. And from the environment, renewable and zero emissions, so it's really attractive to think about this. Is one of the main reasons why we just don't give up. Sometimes people think, oh, you have winds, you have solar, so why you don't give up of hydropower? But it's our main solid, like the firm energy from the energy, the firm energy from the hydropower, and also the quality of there's no emission, and and also because it's one of the cheapest energy, still on the cheapest energy. So we still have problems with the tariff of energy. We have to take care to not increase a lot the tariff in Brazil. So that's the reason why we still continue and thinking about the way to build the right dams and to build the dams right. So the main issue for hydro development, corruption, is something that is hard to talk, but we need to talk. We need to think about the main groups that we have in Brazil that used to run the hydropower sector, the main constructions. We have to rethink that, and especially to think about how to attract the investors and mix the investors with people with different cultural way of doing stuff. So it's something that is under our radar, how to rethink that. Uncertainty and unpredictability, so it's environmental license process is something that we try to improve when you bring before the auction. Now, when you have a hydropower project, since 2004, if you want to construct a hydropower, and you have to go to an auction in order to get the concession for the operation of the hydropower, but you have to have the previous environmental license before the auction. It's something that when you thought about that in the 2004, before that it was a way to avoid unpredictability related to environmental process, but we realized that it's not enough. After the previous license, we still have a lot of unpredictable things during the environmental license process after the auction, and so it becomes delays in the constructions and delays on the final construction of the hydropower. So we have a lot of judicialization, especially related with public ministers and some initiatives after the auction, but it's something that we need to improve communication. That's something I will talk more about that, especially communication and bring all the stuff, all the people and communities bring to the discussion before the auction and during the studies before. And also benefits allocation is something that we are discussing, and social and environmental effects. Costs and predictability, especially related with environmental surprises, as I said, and also social, as I said, when we are talking about the hydropower in the poor regions in Brazil, like some states in Brazil, like Pará, like Mato Grosso, we have to deal with a lack of sometimes totally absence of government, and sometimes the hydropower investors have to take care of some of things that is not their business, but it's something that the people that live there, I used to say that, I'm really sensible for that, people that live there doesn't care if you are from this investor, you are the one that I can talk, so you bring me the sanitation, you bring me the water, you bring, so it's something that we have to care, and you have to know that it's happening. But it creates risks for investment, and as a consequence, we have a higher price for the energy. So, as I said, we have the window of opportunity. We have, as a consequence of the crisis that Brazil are living, we have a firm energy oversupply now in Brazil in the system in the short to mid term. We are under a strong recession in the last 3 years, and unfortunately, I think that for at least this year and the next year is still under a recession. So power plants that was that auction under a higher GDP growth expression start to operate in the next 2-3 years, so it can attend with good conditions of reliability. So we are under a good opportunity to revisiting the concepts and planning of the future electricity matrix. So we call the house cleaning. We have that time to do that. And for the future hydro to be important in the energy matrix, to the plan A, as we say, we have to have a backup plan, because we know that's not easy. We know that we are talking, especially, as I said, we have some projects that were planned in the past and need to be revisited if you want to go further with that. But it's that is the project that we have under our shelves. So it's the project that we can think now, but we have the opportunity to rethink that project. But it's our plan A to complement, especially to complement renewable penetration. So finally the gaps in needs to hydropower development. And how do we see the future? We have the national electricity energy needs. As I said, we have a centralized operation. We have complementary characters in different regions in Brazil, but we have a strong penetration of renewable energy sources, and it brings new challenge to the national electricity grid. But we also need to address the regional development. As I said, we have poor regions in Brazil that are related with our expansion, so we need to think about that. We have local society interests, and we have the hydro plants, and we can think like hydropower as a local development vector, different from the older perspective, like just a producing megawatt. Let's see these people, let's get again these people from want to build a dam and just want to build but it's not just that. We know that it's not just about the megawatts, and we also need to discuss with all the stakeholders involved in the process, ensuring participation, decision making, legitimacy, transparency, and accountability. So there is some it's a working in progress. So I think that's from here to the final, and also I bring some annex, some slides to discuss with you guys. It's something that is really open. It's really a brainstorming, like the challenges, some examples that we bring here, and some possible approach to deal with that. And hydro development in indigenous lands. Now, it's a huge challenge. I know there's a lot of anthropologists and people that work exactly with that. We need to, from my perspective, it's something that it's my experience, Angela, talking. We need to rethink like the FUNAI and the work with FUNAI, how to interact with them and how to make what we talk with them getting the indigenous people. It's different what we from the energy sector we used to discuss with FUNAI, but what we discuss when you go to the people with the indigenous people, we hear something different that we hear from FUNAI. So I think this is something from the government perspective, is not from the energy side, but I think that we need to rethink the FUNAI and discuss with the indigenous people. It's not just about the FUNAI, but also with them. They live there, they know better than no one what will be the better. So we also have to discuss with public prosecutor office and Ministry of Justice, all the institution related with indigenous questions in Brazil, and how to provide benefits, the real benefits to them. It's not related about money, it's not related about this, not just money, this infrastructure that comes from this, the money and all this stuff. When you talk about conservation units, it's something really hard that we've been dealing with lots of it's like lacking of articulation, exactly like that. Sometimes we are studying a river basin, for example, for hydropower development, and in the middle of the study, they decide, the environmental ministry, for example, decide to create a whole protected area. It's okay. I think that's okay. Probably, of course, they have their studies, their support, the decision, but it looks like the energy side from the surprise. It doesn't seem like they are in the same government. You are spending a lot of money doing that research here. At the same time, the same government decide to. It's something that we try to avoid. Something that we try to put all the people in the same room. People from energy, people from environmental ministry, people from justice. When you talk about the indigenous people, but try to put them together to discuss like a. Altogether, like a state, like a long-term view for the country, not just about one sector or another sector. It's what's better for the country. So we need to define the procedure to carry out the studies and define specific mechanisms to compensate the impacts. Is something that it's always on the discussion, and it's not. We have a lot of studies and how to compensate, but I think that it's something that needs to be under study always. It's something that's changed with the time. Sometimes you studied a compensation or a mitigation action that worked 5 years ago, but not working now, and it's something that we need to rethink all the time. So, and misunderstanding in social communication is something that they really realize. I've been working, as I said, for 18 years in that sector, and it's something that is always called my attention, how we are poor in our communication. We are not working that and sometimes I used to say that people from my side, for example, they call electrolysis like the language from electric, the megawatts language. They don't care about talking with people and try to talk like how people will understand that. Now, forget about megawatt, forget about what. Try to put them in their shoes and try to talk to them like that. Something that we really need to improve. And necessity of regional studies and allied government politics beyond, as I said, put all the people together and understand that we need to recognize that hydropower plants could be a vector of local development and should be. It's not a mistake. Sometimes people say, oh no, I don't have to take care about social concerns. It's just about the construction. It's not real. We need to recognize that we have to take care, and if you take care of that before, when you start to planning and you start to think about what will be the best for that region could have no, it's not good for that region, so let's try to do it in another way or in another part of another river or basin, something that we need to change that approach. So it's something that we are. But if you would like to build the right hydro and build them right, I'm sorry, we want to build the right dams. And we need to choose the project that makes sense on the system perspective. As I said, we have like old projects in the shelves, and that's something that concerns us a lot about. We need to revisit that project and try to see if they make sense from the system perspective. For example, the distance from the major load centers is something that when you talk about the hydropower in Pará, for example, we know that the energy from the dam in Pará goes to São Paulo and goes to Rio de Janeiro, and sometimes it takes a lot of investments in transmission and also environmental impacts with the transmission lines. We have to look at that as a whole. It makes sense to have that far. Sometimes it makes sense because it's really cheap. Even with all the considerations of the transmission lines, it will be the best option to the tariff of energy, because it will be the cheaper energy with the stability, with all the good part of hydropower. But we have to take care of that. And the production complementary with existing hydros is something that we have to take care, and especially for renewable energy source that we have a huge penetration. Accumulated energy benefits is something really related with our system. When we have a lot of dams constructed already under operation in the river, sometimes makes sense to construction a dam ahead, like upstream, because the energy from the storage, for example, if you can build a small dam in a river that has a lot of dams already on operation, the energy from that dam will be we accumulate all the benefits from the hydro downstream. So it's really interesting perspective to revisiting the projects that we have on the shelf. So regional solutions, we also have to have some small hydro, especially in some regions of Brazil that we are isolated. We have a small part of the country, like 1% of our population, that are out of ISO operation. They are in we call isolated systems. And sometimes we have regional solution that works for them. It's better than to use oil, to burn oil to have electricity. It's better to construct a small dam or something like a photovoltaic with small plants, something like that. Operational condition is something really, really important now. As I said, when you need to do our homework to looking for a project that makes sense, we need to look for ones that can operate with daily variation, especially considered, as I said, the wind and the solar that we have in our system. Sometimes we have dams with restrictions. It depends on the river, it depends on the conditions, or sometimes, for example, you have one dam upstream a large city. You cannot have large or operations that can create a flood or something like that, because you have to avoid that because of the occupation downstream. So we have to take care about all the restrictions that could have in some rivers. So that is something to looking for the dams that make sense. So automated tools for project screening can help in this phase. Is something that we are looking. We are rethinking our tools, all the models that we have. As I said, we have some models that used to work, and I was discussing with Mauricio. I have something that the best model is the model that you know best, but sometimes we need to rethink your model. You know that best, but it's not. It not fits well for your system now. The system changed, and we need to rethink our models. So, and if you want to build the dams right, we must consider those with smaller social and environmental impacts on mitigation and monitoring, communication. As I said, we need to consider as a reality that hydropower is a vector of regional development in some parts of some regions in Brazil. And we need to think about changes in license process, listen to stakeholders, and ensure that participation in decision-making progress, not only to approve decisions already approved. Changing in environmental compensation funds is something that we are thinking about, resources to improve the quality of life, and plant designs changes, technology to reduce adverse effects. For example, fishing mitigation, there's a lot of study about related to that, and we are looking at that and try to bring the best solution that under all the research, and coordinate hydropower with other renewable resources. And at last, but not least, hydro development needs to be revisited, as I said, and carry out about the coordinated approach with the following long-term guidelines. Hydro development must be driving force for sustainability, inclusiveness, and social and economic development. Coordination between the sectors to implement sustainability standards for the Amazon region is something that we need to take care. And hydroelectric power and biodiversity conservation must be compatible. Discussions with all actors involved in the process, ensure participation in decision-making legitimacy, transparency, and accountability. Align electricity generation with social and environmental policy, and consider its benefits and complementary with renewables. This point is, finally, the pragmatism is everything, but the point, consider if the economic benefits in complementary with renewables is something is our main focus from the revision of the how to pay and how to recognize the real value of
You can just click, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And consider the benefits of the hydropower complementary is something that we, as I said, when we start planning our hydropower share in Brazil, we didn't think that the hydropower will work as a complementary with renewables. So we are discussing might make sense to compensate hydro from the wind farm. Well, one wind farm should compensate the hydropower paying something because they are complementary. So it's something that is under discussion. So improvements on the communication, as I said, and technical activities among other activities. And we are really to have an open discussion on these issues. As I said, we are under a window of opportunity to discuss, and so this is an open discussion and ongoing work. So thank you very much for the opportunity.